Now let's tell you about Alexander Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, better known as Europe's last dictator. He's been in power for almost 29 years. He's an ally of Vladimir Putin. Of late, he's been in the news. Why? Because he's been missing from the public eye. There's a health scare. Opposition parties in Belarus are on alert. They're readying for his fall. Russia, too, has expressed concern. But today, there was a plot twist. Lukashenko made a public appearance. The Belarusian media released a video of him at a military command base. He appeared a little weak, though. His hand looked like it was wrapped in a bandage, but the 68-year-old seems to be alive. Our next report tells you why his absence caused frantic speculation and what his re-emergence means.
Alexander Lukashenko. He's the president of Belarus, the country's only president, actually. He captured the presidency during its first ever election in 1994. This was after the USSR broke up and Belarus became an independent nation. So Lukashenko has been president for almost 29 years. But over the last week, there was speculation that the dictator had fallen. Lukashenko hadn't been seen in public since May 9th. That was during the Victory Day celebrations in Belarus and Russia. It's to celebrate the victory of Soviet forces against Nazi Germany. Lukashenko was in Moscow to attend the parade, but he seemed ill. He skipped a dinner hosted by Russian President Vladimir Putin and disappeared from the public eye for a while. There was a cautious sense of optimism among Belarusian opposition parties. Supporters were told to be prepared for anything, because if Lukashenko was truly out of the picture, there was hope for change. Lukashenko has famously been called Europe's last dictator. It's a nickname he has used himself, and it's quite accurate. He's done everything you'd expect from a dictator: abolished presidential term limits, allegedly rigged elections, threatened and jailed political opponents, even reportedly made some of them disappear. He has cracked down on pro-democracy protesters with an iron fist, with the Belarusian security establishment serving as his own personal enforcers. He's also had a close relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin for years. The Kremlin expressed concerns in the wake of reports about his health. As speculation grew, Lukashenko re-emerged. Belarusian state media came out with this footage earlier today.
Тут нога человеческая давно не ходила, да? Дороги нет, лес не убран, так и правильно. Работе после зимы. Какой зимы? Сейчас уже осень скоро. Группа деревьев случайно сейчас они ж валяются вот гнилые, уже третий год. Не знаю. Маленький городок, его уже можно в порядок привести за одну неделю.
The media showed Lukashenko berating military officers, quite on brand for the purported strongman. The media also released this footage.
Я имею в виду Брянскую область.
3 days after the events near us, I mean in the Bryansk region, when 4 aircraft were shot down and we were forced to respond. Since then, we, our troops, have been on high alert. So I'm interested to know about the situation around the country and, of course, the direction and perspectives of the development of this situation.
That statement could serve to prove that the video is recent, because he's talking about an incident in Russia from a few days ago, when 4 Russian aircraft were shot down, most likely by Ukrainian forces. This happened on Saturday, so the opposition can't claim that Lukashenko's video is old. They can't say it's some old message that has been released to mislead the public. His re-emergence is a setback to them. Their plans of political change will have to wait. Russia, on the other hand, will be pleased. Putin's old ally is still around, and one of Russia's neighbors remains friendly. For the Belarusian people looking for democracy, they'll have to wait a while longer. Europe's last dictator hasn't fallen yet.
We start with the war in Ukraine. Day 447 of this war. On most days, the story remains the same. More violence, more deaths, and a bitter war of words. But today is different. Today, Russia launched a fierce attack on Ukraine. These were aerial attacks. They targeted the capital, Kyiv. Ukraine, too, is attacking Russia, and it's striking deep inside Russian-held territory. The intensity of the fighting has increased. So has the urgency. They seem to be fighting to the finish. The question is this the beginning of the end of this war? Let's start with the Russian attacks on Kyiv. Last night, Russia stepped up its aerial attacks. A barrage of missiles was fired at Kyiv. This happened at 2:30 a.m. local time. Emergency sirens were activated. The city was woken up. Soon, loud explosions were heard. The sky was lit up by large flashes of light. These were Russian missiles being neutralized by Ukrainian air defenses. It was a tense night for Kyiv. Consider what one of the foreign diplomats said. This is the British ambassador to Ukraine. A full-on aerial attack on Kyiv last night. Pretty intense. Bangs and shaking walls are not an easy night. Hope everyone is okay. Reports say Russia attacked Kyiv from 3 directions: the north, the south and the east. Russia fired at least 18 missiles from land, sea and the air. Also, 6 Iranian Shahed drones and 3 reconnaissance drones were pressed into service. So Russia went after Kyiv with full force, but it failed to inflict much damage. As of this afternoon, no deaths were reported. At least 3 people were injured. So what was the purpose of this attack? Reports say Moscow wanted to destroy Kyiv's air defenses. Ukraine uses the US-made Patriot air defense systems. They arrived a week ago. They were supplied by the US and Germany. The Patriots have enhanced Ukraine's defenses, and that's what Russia is trying to break through relentless air strikes. The objective is to weaken Ukraine before a larger attack. What about Ukraine's response? Well, they too are intensifying attacks. Today they struck deep inside Luhansk. This is a city in the east and it's in Russian control. Ukraine used long-range missiles for the strike, and this is the first time Ukrainian forces have done this. Earlier they did not have these capabilities. They couldn't strike targets that were far away, but now they can. And their targets are command and control centers of the Russian military. Moscow has issued a statement about this. It says Ukraine is deploying British-made Storm Shadow missiles and that Russian forces took down at least one of them but missed others. The Kremlin has also issued a threat.
The reported British supplies of long-range missiles will require an adequate response from our military, who will consider the relevant decisions from a military point of view.
So Russia is threatening a response. But the new weapons give Ukraine a clear edge. They could shift the course of the war, at least in the skies. Earlier, Russia had the edge. Now Ukraine has neutralized it. It has new missiles and weapons. It can reach most of the occupied territories in the east, even Crimea. That was annexed by Russia in 2014. Zelensky has the weapons, and he's sourcing more, and he won't be shy of using them.
We are returning home with new military help, newer and more powerful weapons for the front, more protection for our people, greater political support.
In 3 days, he's visited 4 European capitals. He's managed to secure significant military aid. Let me show you the list. The most significant package comes from Germany. It includes another 30 Leopard tanks, 20 armored fighting vehicles, 16 air defense systems, and more than 200 drones. Also a range of other arms and ammunition. France and Italy have promised to send tanks, ammunition and air defense systems. The UK too has pledged more aid. Their package includes hundreds of air defense missiles and more armed drones. Why such an aggressive push now? Why is Zelensky being given so many weapons? The Western powers, for a change, seem to have clarity on what they want. They want Ukrainian forces to reclaim more land, to push the Russians back and to secure their gains. The idea is to get more leverage on the battlefield before any peace negotiations can begin. So for Zelensky, it is now or never. If he cannot secure sizable victories now, he risks losing support from the West. Because frankly, no one has an endless supply of weapons and money, and no one wants a forever war. To Germany now, Berlin is quite annoyed with Beijing. Why? Because of China's secret police stations. They're still operational, though China says they're not. It said it shut down such facilities in February. Also, China doesn't call them secret police stations, it calls them service stations. Either way, it assured Germany that such stations had been closed. So Germany decided to check, and it found that China was lying. The Interior Ministry spokesperson has issued a statement. Let me quote from what has been said. The security authorities continue to assume that there are 2 so-called overseas police stations in Germany. How do you think China responded to this? With another denial. The Chinese embassy in Berlin has issued a statement. You can see the translation on your screen. Let me give you the highlights of this. These volunteers are simply dedicated overseas Chinese, not Chinese police officers. There are also no so-called police stations or overseas police service centers. These voluntary offers of support have been discontinued. We can expect that the German side will deal with this objectively and leave no room for further speculation. There were also the usual declarations of China respecting international law and sovereignty. Now, China would have you believe that all of this is harmless, that these stations have no sinister agenda. They're just outposts to help Chinese citizens abroad, but no one's taking their word for it. The world sees these stations for what they really are, centers to intimidate Chinese dissidents. They're set up in areas with a sizable Chinese diaspora, and they act like Beijing's dirty work departments. They perform tasks that are too shady for diplomats, like tracking down dissidents, intimidating them to go back to China. And there are many such people all over the world. Those who opposed the communist regime and had to flee China. Those who had politically motivated cases against them. Those who face arrest on trumped-up charges in China. Such people try to make a life for themselves in other countries. Many of them leave their families behind in China, and that becomes their weakness that Beijing exploits. They force dissidents to return, and they threaten harm to their families. And it's all done through these secret police stations. China runs them all over the world, hundreds of them. The first reports about these came out last year. Many countries woke up to this fact. They decided to take action. Last October, a German spokesperson made a bold declaration. I'm quoting again. The federal government does not tolerate the exercise of foreign state authority, and accordingly, Chinese authorities have no executive powers on the territory of the Federal Republic of Germany. It's been more than 6 months since, but China's secret police stations are still around. How? They've apparently gone mobile. Yesterday, a spokesperson said that the stations are, quote-unquote, usually not fixed stationary offices, but mobile facilities. So basically, Chinese intimidators on wheels. How lovely. This adaptability is why countries are struggling to shut these stations down. When under the scanner, the secret Chinese police stations just up and move. And according to the US, they also purge their data. Last month, we told you about 2 arrests. 2 Chinese secret police officials were arrested in the US. On what charges? Obstructing justice by destroying evidence of their communications. Basically, erasing the data. You see how it can be difficult to dismantle the insidious Chinese operation. Yesterday, Germany publicly rebuked China, and as usual, China denied any wrongdoing. Until countries find a way to tighten the screws, Beijing will keep on meddling in their territory. You've heard of life coaches, I'm sure, or career coaches. But do you know about smile coaches? They're specialist smile tutors, and they've become all the rage in Japan, especially in the post-Wuhan virus era. 2 months back, Japan lifted its mask mandate. You don't have to wear a mask in public anymore, which should be good news, except that the Japanese have forgotten how to express it with a smile. After spending almost 3 years behind masks, their facial muscles have become a bit rusty, it seems. People say they've forgotten how to smile. So now they're paying tutors to teach them how to smile. I'm not making this up. The next time someone says, you can't put a price on a smile, tell them about this. Because Japan's smile coaches charge up to $650. Here's a report.
It takes 43 muscles to frown and only 17 muscles to smile. But that's easier said than done. Introverts will probably relate to this. But what's happening now is not limited to them. We're talking about the Japanese. They've been concealing their mouths for 3 years now, covering their faces with masks, all thanks to the Wuhan virus. But this March, their government relaxed the mask rules, so the Japanese people became free to roam around without masks. But this didn't really relax them. In fact, it had the very opposite reaction. Because with the mask off, their emotions lay bare, so they are now trying to put smiles on their faces. Except instead of beaming grins, they're breaking into awkward smiles, some of which are completely fake, and others simply look pained. We're not kidding. The Japanese are really struggling with their smiles. They're failing to adapt to a life without face masks. Some say they have completely forgotten how to smile. Others say they try to smile, but their facial muscles are rusty. Some have even developed a complex about it. They feel awkward about their smile. So they're looking for solutions. They want to relearn the art of smiling. And believe it or not, there are people who specialize in helping them. We're talking about smile coaches. Japan has hundreds of them. They're specialist smile tutors who are teaching people how to smile. They have become pioneers of an odd business that is surprising the world: smile education. These tutors want people to devote time to smiling, to do it consciously and do it more often. They now have thousands of students who pay about $650 each to regain their smile. For them, this course is totally worth it, and that sounds believable. Smiling is good for both physical and mental well-being. It helps people live longer by relieving stress, boosting immune systems, and reducing blood pressure. Plus, social contact is the key to good living, and facial expressions are the key to social contact. The Japanese know this. They've even inculcated a culture of laughter yoga, much like in India. But due to social distancing, they seem to have forgotten the basics. So the Japanese are participating in smiling studies. They're learning how to relax their facial muscles and training them just as they train their body muscles. They're holding up mirrors to check their progress, and a lot of them are coming out of these classes happy customers. And why wouldn't they? After all, they spend hours smiling. These classes are a hit among Japanese women, but these classes aren't just for retail customers. Companies like IBM are holding smile training sessions for their employees too. And nursing homes are hiring smile tutors for their elderly residents. We know this sounds odd, hiring a tutor and paying to relearn something as basic as smiling, but maybe there is an upside to this. Maybe we can all learn a bit from the Japanese. Along with leg and arm days during our workouts, maybe we can also incorporate smile days.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with Sudan. A fire broke out in the city of Omdurman. This is where intense battles have been fought between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary troops. In Italy's Pompeii, 2 more victims of a 2,000-year-old volcanic eruption have been found. In Peru, an anemic, malnourished and hypothermic sloth has been rescued. And finally, taking you back in history, what makes the 16th of May significant? On this day, the so-called Cultural Revolution was launched in China by communist leader Mao Zedong. The year was 1966. Mao wanted to assert, his authority over the Chinese government and the people. He felt that China was headed in the wrong direction. He wanted the so-called impure elements of the society to be purged. In the months and years that followed, elderly and intellectual people were attacked and harassed. Millions of people, were killed. Many were tortured and imprisoned. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Lui aveva la protezione, quella cosa tonda.
email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony.